What's up? What's up, everyone? How's everybody doing? I'm so excited for this live stream. We have is my sound okay first off? Like y'all know, I'm not a tech genius. Let me know if my sound's okay. Until then, I'll just keep going. I'm so excited to have Brianna Joy Gray on the show today, and we're gonna have Christian Smalls join us later. We'll be talking about the Amazon Union Drive probably in about 40-45 minutes. So we'll have Christian Smalls jump on then. Yeah, how's everybody doing? Sound great? Awesome. So we're gonna be talking about the American Rescue Plan. What they've been putting out as this amazing, most progressive legislation in our lifetimes. To me, that's more of a indictment of our politics. If you look at this bill and what's in this bill, and you say it's the greatest progressive legislation of our lifetimes, well, we got some work to do. I tweeted earlier, because I keep thinking I'm like child poverty, and I've been doing a lot of research on child poverty, and I'm like, well, the kids are in poverty. The kids are in poverty because their parents are in poverty. So why don't you just raise the parents' wages? No, they don't want to do that. See, that would be an actual redistributive policy. No, they're going to make sure you get a tax credit, right? Which comes from the pool of tax money that we all pay into, instead of actually raising your wage, which would be at the expense of businesses who give them money, and they don't want to do that. So what's up, Rick French, Jordan Deck, how y'all doing? Where's my $2,000 check? I mean, didn't you know that $1,400 is $2,000 because you got $600 from another administration, and that counts? Why are impoverished people paying tax in the first place? Exactly. Well, it's because they don't, everyone's got to chip in, right? That's what they always parrot, except Amazon, Netflix, none of those corporations, they don't have to chip in. These billionaires can just take their money, take it over to tax havens. You guys ever think about capital gains tax? Capital gains tax is 15% as opposed to everyone else's taxes, which are somewhere in the 20s or 30s. But capital gains is just earned income in the stock market. So they wrote the legislation so that the earned income you get when you're working your ass off 40 hours a week, that's taxed higher than what capital gains is taxed at, even though you just have capital and you put it in the stock market. Oh, and by the way, they socialize the stock market to make sure it won't ever crash. So it's just about who writes the laws, who's in charge, who has the ear of who. And we know that that's the big businesses. They have the ear of the lawmakers. So, they're going to get policies passed that help them, that advantage them. I mean, I'm sure all y'all know that. But there's a lot of people out there that don't know that. They don't even know what capital gains tax is. They don't know, that a lot of these corporations. I mean, I think since Bernie's campaign, a lot more people have been, hip to it. But I mean, there's a lot of people that still don't know that, you're getting screwed over by corporations and whatnot, and then they've bought the government. Okay, so I'm so excited to welcome Brianna Joy Gray. Let's see if, hey there, Brianna, can you hear me?
Hey, Justin. Yeah, I can.
Oh,
How are you
okay,
doing?
perfect. Good. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm sorry I'm a little bit late.
Oh, you're
I went
good.
on a run and I got farther away than I thought I was.
Yeah, I had a really good workout this morning, and
Uh-huh.
if you want to tweet something where you're gonna get shit on by, obviously the establishment, but even a lot of lefty channels too. Just work out before. You already feel accomplished for the day, right? And then it's like, well, I don't need my tweet to do anything more than inform people on what's really going on.
Yeah, I mean, you were on it. Obviously, you are a professional athlete who has more discipline than me. I will say that I have worked out every day of March. I've turned
Okay.
over a new leaf. But
There you
sometimes
go.
what happens is I'm so committed to doing it that it's just another form of procrastination. So it's like I can't do anything till workout. I didn't run until like 3.
So you didn't get anything done before that?
Nope, this is the first thing on my to-do list for the day.
Well, that's you know what? I like that. I like being first on the list. Let's talk a little bit about your podcast. I have to say, absolutely love it.
Oh,
And the reason I really love it is because when you have, well, one, I want to ask you, what's it like having like truly powerful people like someone like Rokana? I mean, like he said, I think on Jimmy's show, he was like, we're in the tippy top of privilege. Like, you are one of the most powerful people in the world if you have a seat in the United States Congress. So, what's it like interviewing people like that? And then on the other hand, like, what's it like? You have to make the active decision. Either I'm gonna, press that person and, give them a tough question that they have to answer, and
yeah.
I'm gonna keep pushing if they don't answer it, like politicians like to do. Or you can make the decision to kind of give them a softball interview, and you never do that, which is why I love the show. So what's it like doing that for the
I
show?
mean, it's funny. There are people who want me to be more aggressive, but I think the difference is tone, not substance. So
Right.
my feeling, and I don't do this consciously, but I've been reflecting on what my interviewing strategy is now that I guess I am a professional interviewer. I think of them more like depositions. My goal isn't to you know, it's not like a dramatic courtroom scene from TV where you just embarrass somebody and humiliate
Right.
someone. And like that is not substantive. That doesn't really advance the conversation. It can feel good, but that's ego driven. In a deposition, your goal is to simply get the facts that you need for trial out, right? And even during a
Yeah.
trial, like on TV, it's like these Perry Mason moments where there's these great revelations and everything is solved because you asked just the right question. In real life, you're getting a jumble of facts out. The order of the witnesses often makes it so that a narrative isn't particularly easy to follow. But your job is at the end in your closing to use everything that you got out on the record during trial to make your case. And I try
Mhm.
not to do too much of making my own case in the course of the interview, but to get what I need to understand, to inform my argument, and to get better understanding for myself and hopefully for the listeners as well of what pressure points there are, how to move the conversation forward, the logical flaws in the
Yeah.
reasoning that's being presented to us by these figures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I
And
get
and
the echo too. I'm sorry, I see the comments, and it's not on my end. I put earphones in.
oh, is that?
um,
Oh, that yeah. That's probably me. You're right. I don't have. Shoot. Let me just turn it down on my end. That should probably fix it. Let me
okay.
know if that fixes it in the chat. Sorry. You I'm sure you've come to understand this too, and I think you might have a producer. I don't have one. This tech stuff, it's hard to be up on that, if you didn't study it or anything.
It's no joke.
Yeah, and in light of you saying, you want to you expose the logical flaws in all of these arguments. The reason I really love Bad Faith is when you are pressing, these politicians and whoever you have on, union organizers, you always, when you ask the question, you always frame it perfectly, right? Because a lot of things in our society are framed poorly, in the sense that when you think of like the stimulus checks, right? We're talking about difference between $1,400 and $2,000, right? That's where the frame of the argument, the lens that we're looking at that argument through. What it should be is recurring checks, right? Like that's
Yes.
what every other country was doing. So that's where we should be framing that argument. And so I really like the way you do that. And so, for example, if we talk about the American Rescue Plan and we want to talk about minimum wage, you pressed Rokana on this, and I kind of want to show everyone just how you frame this question, because one, I think it was beautiful, and I think what it does is it gets them to actually answer the question, kind of, and expose, like you're saying, expose what you're looking for them to expose, but it doesn't come off as too aggressive, so they don't like shelter up and just go to their talking points type thing. So let's show everyone this video. This is when Brianna had Ro Khan on the show, and we'll just let you. I hope you don't mind watching yourself.
No, had a better hair day that day.
Let you take it away. Right, exactly. Let you take it away.
It's really quiet on my end. I'm not sure if that's just me.
Is that better? Sorry about that.
So I think the thing that's front and center on a lot of listeners' mind right now is, of course, the status of the stimulus bill, and in particular, it cut out for me.
Did you say it cut out?
Yeah, it went quiet.
Oh, it went quiet. Can't hear it. Okay.
It like muted. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. This is a technical difficulty I was talking about. We might have to deal with a little bit of echo, but I'll get it. I'll get that squared away for next time.
He is the U.S. representative from California's 17th congressional district, representing, among other places, Silicon Valley. Congressman Ro Khan.
Great to be on. Thank you for having me.
Ro, I think the thing that's front and center on a lot of listeners' mind right now is, of course, the status of the stimulus bill, and in particular, in a moment like today, the $15 minimum wage. What, from your perspective, is causing?
Okay, I'm sorry. Is it still? It's too quiet.
Oh, I can hear it now.
Oh, you can hear it. People are saying too low. No go. You should hire a tech guy. I know. I'm sorry. Very quiet. Okay. Well, they get the gist. Well, why don't you kind of go over the way you frame the question, and then kind of what his response was, if you don't mind for us.
Sure. I hope I can remember it accurately, a particular exchange. I mean, for me, the central issue, and you know this as well as anybody else, Justin, is this idea that we are told that the primary path forward for progressives is to just keep electing progressives. And
Right.
The idea being that if, I guess they'll have power when they constitute a majority or a plurality of members of Congress. And in the interim, we're basically told that we're not supposed to have much in the way of expectations of them. But what we do know, as evidenced by Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, is that because of narrow majorities in the House and the Senate, very small numbers of senators can have an enormous amount of power. So the question becomes, why isn't it that the progressives in Congress don't exert that power when they have the opportunity? And I believe that when we were talking to Representative Khanna, it was around the time that Joe Biden was gesturing to the fact that he either didn't think the parliamentarian was going to rule in favor of a $15 minimum wage being passable via budget reconciliation, or it might have been just after the parliamentarian issued her advisory opinion, and
Right.
Joe Biden indicated that he was going to follow it as though it had the force of a Supreme Court verdict.
Right.
And my question to Ro, what I really wanted to understand in the course of that interview, was why it was, knowing how Congress works, knowing that there was the power to overrule the parliamentarian, knowing that a small number of progressives could hold up any bill until we include $15 minimum wage. Not only that there are a whole slate of progressive policies that are enormously popular. Why is it that so many of his colleagues don't actually support those policies, since obviously he's in a position to talk to them about it and ask them? And, what he told us is what we often hear, right? Which is that, I'm afraid that if I support X, Y, and Z, Medicare for all, $15 minimum wage, marijuana legalization, all these things,
Right.
which we know majorities of Americans, even bipartisan majorities, support, that they will lose elections, that they will somehow become vulnerable.
Which doesn't really hold up, especially considering AOC, they literally poured millions of dollars into her opponent and she won comfortably. So that argument, is not one that it actually holds up.
Right. So then I asked him the follow-up. I said, well, Ro, you and I both know that's not the case, that all of the blue dog Democrats are the ones that almost cost us the House in the last election, and all the Medicare for all supporting Democrats won. So at what point, and here's the real issue, at what point are you going to be willing to call out your fellow Democrats for the fact that they're basing their decisions not on what their constituents want, but who the donor base, who's filling their campaign coffers, basically.
Exactly.
And that's the harder question, and that's the question that I think, if we're asked with consistency in the mainstream media, would mean that we had a very, very different politics in this country.
Yeah, for sure. And in that interview as well, let me let me put this on the screen, because I think this is something that a lot of people are frustrated with. And it's this, right? Ro Khanna he'll tweet out that, which, it's topical, it's, funny. And I think when they first got into Congress, people appreciated and loved that. But it's like, okay, but you just voted for a bill that didn't have the $15 minimum wage in it. Now, I want to probe you on this, because in the way I see it, right, this was a must-pass bill for Joe Biden, which means that, and we saw it pass, not only with no Republican votes, but it actually, one Democrat did withhold his vote.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's not a very progressive, Democrat, but in the letter he said, the minimum wage is not in this. I can't support this bill, right?
Mm.
So if they're not willing to actually use a must-pass bill to, force this minimum wage into it, well, if it's not in this reconciliation bill and you're not going to change any part of your game plan, what's to say it's going to be in the next reconciliation bill, and they're not going to do the exact same thing in the next bill? So what's your plan to do something about that?
Yeah.
And when pressed on that, they don't ever seem to have a real answer.
Well,
Like,
yeah,
what
and
are your thoughts on
unfortunately, they're not even really pressed on it, especially often.
Right.
So and this is, we get mad at liberals, but honestly, how should they even know about these kinds of arguments if they're not even exposed to them? So yes, I have a friend from college who were great Instagram pals. He's into fashion and we follow each other, and it's a fun follow, but we're very different politically. And he's the one that I look at to get a sense of what mainstream Dems are thinking about. Because I know he's arguing in good faith, but we're very, very different politically. And he was tweeting, why aren't these leftists happy? Why can't they be satisfied with anything? We'll just pass $15 minimum wage the next time around. Well, what isn't discussed is that the budget reconciliation, you have 2 opportunities a year. And in the second opportunity, it's not going to be the exigency that we have right now,
Right.
where we're trying to pass a COVID bill in, at a really crucial time. People need vaccine distributions. Obviously, we were facing the unemployment cliff, and the pressure that exists to Democrats is used to justify why they should make every compromise in the world and never have a backbone. Conservative Democrats and Republicans do understand that the fact of this being a must-pass bill means that you use that as leverage to get what you want in the bill or take what you don't want out of the bill. And I've been having this philosophical argument for a while now, and I was really happy to have it with John Nichols on today's episode of Bad Faith Podcast. He's a veteran progressive reporter from The Nation. And I asked him this. I said, I understand and empathize with progressives who say, I have constituents, I see them every day, they need the things in this bill. I don't feel comfortable playing this game of chicken. Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema don't care what happened to their constituents, so I'm going to back down if it means getting people what they need. Now, that's very nice and humane, kind of human-centered response. But the strategic consequences of that are going to be the long-term right-wing ratcheting of our political system.
Yep.
Because the left is never, they've admitted, they've acknowledged that they will never be willing to take a stand on any issue at any time. And not to make everything about force the vote. But back in January, the stakes in retrospect couldn't have been lower. What were the risks? What we're talking about isn't a $1 trillion relief package. All we're talking about is whether or not Nancy Pelosi is Speaker of the House. There were a lot of bad faith actors who created fake stakes, right? They pretended like one of the potential risks was Kevin McCarthy becoming Speaker of the House. And even some members of Congress perpetuated that, right? Unfortunately, we heard Pramila Jayapal go on with Ryan Graham at The Intercept, and weeks after the vote, still make that argument, right? And I'm not saying that she did that knowingly or if she is sincerely confused herself. Either way, that's not a good situation for a Congress member to be in, right? Given the potential leverage that existed in that situation. So if Democrats aren't even willing to hold up the speakership vote, when the downfall is what? Public opinion? You know, of course, now with all of this, you know, sincerely needed aid package on the line, well, now they have an excuse to point to something. But we saw based on force the vote that it's just an excuse. No matter what the risk reward ratio is, they're unwilling to do it because of the potential specter of negative press. And if you're not willing to ever do anything, Kristen Sinema doesn't seem to care about negative press. And honestly, she'll probably win re-election. Like Joe Manchin has been, too. He's been a real pill for a real long time. And yet he remains in office and will probably be there until he doesn't want to be there anymore. You know, and that's not to say people shouldn't try and all of that. But the reality remains that your responsibility is to frame an argument. You should not be in a position where you're just saying, well, the media is going to say this. Of course, the media is going to say X, Y, and Z. But, you know, FDR, this is a point that was made by John Nichols on our podcast. FDR faced enormous media backlash. The papers hated him and called him everything but the child of God. And it didn't matter because the people loved him and he was reelected more times than anybody in American history. You know, Donald Trump was reviled by the media with good reason. And yet there was not a direct simpatico between how the press felt about him and frankly, how a lot of other Republicans felt about him versus how the people that ultimately voted him into office felt about him. So I think we need to be taking more responsibility over the media cycle and having more trust and understanding that the power these progressives have comes from the people and their base, the people who they raised grassroots funds from, who got them elected, who are willing to support them, who are willing to march and help to skew the media narrative the way all of the protesters this last summer did with Black Lives Matter.
Right.
And to support and lift up that base for protection. Because if you're always looking to Nancy Pelosi and the rest of the corporate Democrats to shield you, you are going to be barking up the wrong tree. You're never going to win. You have no power in the context of an inside game.
Yeah. And the part you said about Trump, I kind of want to harp on that because I think people forget that until he started saying $2,000 and forced a national conversation, there was what? I don't even know. Was there any stimulus check in the bill that they had passed? Or was it maybe it was 600 and Trump was like, I'm not signing a bill until it's $2,000. Now imagine Joe Biden says, I'm not signing this relief bill until the $15 minimum wage is in the bill. Now that changes the whole argument, right? The frame of the argument. No, instead, he said, let's not overrule the parliamentarian. Part one, where you're not fighting at all. And then you have people like Chuck Schumer who strip it out of the bill, essentially forcing Bernie Sanders' amendment to get 60 votes because they have, arcane Senate rules. They can have a motion or whatever. And now Bernie's, his amendment needs 60 votes just to get a vote. And of course, you're not going to get that, right? And so that's the essential issue. And so as I was going to show a video of Nancy Pelosi, and next time I'll have, the audio much better, I promise, for y'all. But essentially, you can find it on Twitter. She's up there talking about the fight for 15, and she has, a board, and it's like, saying, $10 by 2021, by 2025 is $15. And she's sitting up there saying, well, you think you could live off $9? You think you could live off $10? And this is the thing that frustrates me so much. It doesn't even frustrate me. It pisses me off about Democrats, and that's they act as if, like, I think John Nichols, right? You said that's who you interviewed. He mentioned this. They act like they're some type of managers, right? Instead of having active ability to improve people's lives. And so when Nancy Pelosi gets up there and, in a national press conference showing that, oh, this minimum wage would help so many people, we're still fighting for it. Whoa, you passed this bill without it in there. And so when people see Nancy Pelosi do that, it's easy for us to be like, okay, obviously that's dumb. Like, you can almost laugh. It's almost comical. But then when you see Ro Khanna tweet something like anything below a $15 million, it to me, if it falls in the same sense. Like I receive that the same way. Even if Ro Khanna ostensibly supports these things, but if you're not going to actually do anything, be willing to withhold your vote, then does it really matter? Look, I had a conversation with my dad, love him to death. And I got him to admit that Joe Biden was, I factually got him to concede that Joe Biden was not fighting for this $15 minimum wage. And he said, Jay, I think he, even though he might not be fighting for it, I think he really wants it. I said, Dad, what is the difference to someone who's still making $725? Yeah. And that's the core issue, is it not? Like, what's the difference at this point?
Yeah, there is no difference. And getting caught up in these conversations about what the motives are or what people really want, there's a real temptation for the left to do it. We saw around Force a Vote, a lot of folks wanting to say, well, I don't think the issue is that the squad members are corrupted. I don't think that they are taking corporate money. I don't think that they are bought off. And I don't think that there's any evidence for that either. But no one's really making that argument. The argument is that regardless of what's motivating their decision not to fight in the ways that we elected them to fight for us, they're not doing it. So it can be because they woke up on the wrong side of the bed that day. It can be because they have a sincere belief that if they're just really nice to Nancy Pelosi and play along, they'll get what they want 3 years down the line, 10 years down the line. It could be any number of things. But my real concern is that the left is starting to buy into this weaponization of empathy and a different kind of identity politics, which is like just buying into the idea of someone as a good person. And Joe Biden is like the king of this. He is the guy who wears aviators and likes ice cream and is nice to dogs, except I guess when he had to send the one back recently. And, that's supposed to be a substitute for fighting. And we saw the reverse with Bernie. Oh, Bernie doesn't call you on your birthday. Bernie is a grumpy Gus. Bernie won't swap out his old frames for the cool Buddy Holly glasses I wish he'd wear. That stuff ultimately doesn't matter.
Right.
And what it does do, those kinds of conversations, they will seduce you into having a conversation about whether or not AOC should be canceled, which is a distraction. We should be able to say the true thing, which is that there was real power held by progressives. There will continue to be because of the narrow margins in the House. There's real power held by Bernie Sanders as well. I don't think I have to say how much I admire and respect Bernie Sanders. But, when I was talking to John Nichols, I said, well, why, I asked him, should Bernie Sanders have withheld his vote? Bernie Sanders and Joe Manchin are in the exact same position. Any one of them could have foiled this process. And at first he said, I think that Bernie, I would like him to be in a block. I'd like him to have backup. I said, I'd like him to have backup too. I left a job I really love to go and be some form of backup for him on the campaign. I would love for him not to be standing there alone. But Bernie's the guy who said, I've had a lot of lonely votes. He's the one that, referenced that history of being willing to stand alone as something that, legacy that he's really proud of. Why wasn't this one of them? The $15 minimum wage is one of the only parts of the relief package that is systemic in the kind of change it would present. It's permanent. It's truly redistributive. Truly. It would manifest in pulling 50% of Black people out of poverty, 50% of Black people in poverty out of poverty. It's hard to overstate how important that is and how delayed it is. We have never gone as long in American history without a minimum wage raise since the minimum wage.
It's really the 15 is the bare minimum, and it's the bare minimum because it's still not enough. You're telling me that was by 2025, and now they might not even I want to probe you on this. Do you think there's, other than this reconciliation bill, is there any other way that they can even get a $15 minimum wage? Through a standalone bill, I don't think it would pass.
Well, that's the question. Are you going to be in a position where you can get 60 votes? The question is, are they going to get rid of the filibuster? And now people who have been bearish, I always forget which was which, but who've been hesitant about the filibuster have seemingly come on board. Joe Manchin's talking about, so long as it's talking filibuster, which is all anybody's ever been talking about. Bernie has been more assertive about it, even though he was a little lukewarm about it during the campaign. And that's something that the Elizabeth Warren types always harped on. That's an opportunity. But one of the things that was really interesting when we did our live stream on Friday night with David Sirota, I ask him and people like him and David Dayan for all of my procedural questions. I don't pretend to be some legislative expert. But what he was explaining was all the various points in the fight over the $15 minimum wage where the posture could have been a 50 plus one vote. But because of what the Democrats did, it became a 60 vote.
Yep.
So, for example, I might be getting the facts this a little bit wrong, but like when the parliamentarian ruled, if Kamala Harris were to overrule the parliamentarian, to overrule Kamala Harris would have required a 60 vote, right? Like,
Right.
So depending on what the Democrats could have done, they could have put themselves in the position where advancing the minimum wage took fewer votes than blocking the efforts to advance the minimum wage. And yet they took the exact opposite posture and then claimed all of these procedural reasons for why they couldn't do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it's fundamentally because the corporate Democrats see their relationship to the squad and the House progressives as truly adversarial. The squad, their actions don't show me that they think the same, that they see that relationship the same way. And what was really revealing to me during Force the Vote was and I had it queued up. We were gonna react to it. I'm angry. I'm angry because I had it queued up. We were gonna react to the video, but I'll just summarize.
Again, I just think the issue is you just have to turn the volume up, but because you don't have earphones,
I don't have the headphones.
When I talk, I'm loud, but I don't have to talk during the video, so you can just go ahead and turn it up.
Okay. If y'all will bear with me, I will try one more time to get this ready. It's let's see.
Oh yeah, this is a good interview.
This is and Marianne Williamson did a very good job.
She did a great job.
So let's try and get this queued up. Let me know in the comments what's going on.
It's very quiet.
Is that better?
And I always want them to think in terms of what they've done right and can do right. But I also submit to them that in order to heal their lives and to change their lives, they're going to have to look in the mirror. And the Democratic Party, I understand what you're saying. Well, we have to be positive. We have to see what we've done right. We have to build on what we've done right. But I believe we also have to look in the mirror. And everything that you've said, even though, you said to me, I'm an infrastructure person. And I understand that. And I can appreciate it. But if I'm some college kid out in the Midwest, they don't necessarily understand the nuance. They just understand that Medicare for all is not being put on the table. And they don't care why at this point. But that last time we got 3 hearings in the House of Representatives, official hearings in the committees of record for the first time in the history of the United States Congress. That didn't happen by just people saying, oh, we should do it. It happened by people mobilizing, putting pressure on Congress, fighting and negotiating within Congress on the rules package. The reason we got those hearings is because we said we weren't going to have the votes on the rules package. And so we were able to get the hearings committed to, and we got those hearings. We got over 50% of the Democratic caucus supporting Medicare for all. Did you know, Marianne, that before I introduced H.R. 1374, there was no Medicare for all bill? There was a resolution. It was about 18 pages long. It was the one that John Conyers had put forward for 20 years. But there was no detailed bill of how we were going to get it done. Tell me the plan. We got into the Biden-Sanders Unity Task Force, through the Unity Task Force, Healthcare Task Force, which I co-chaired. We were able to get significant pieces of Medicare for all into the Biden platform. We didn't get Medicare for all. We knew we weren't going to. Our candidate lost. All of our candidates that supported Medicare for all lost. So Joe Biden won, so we knew he had put a stake in the sand around the Affordable Care Act. What were we able to get in there? We got a commitment that healthcare would be untethered from employment. That was huge. We got a commitment that any public option would be administered by Medicare and not by a private insurance company. You don't know how big that is and how hard we are going to have to fight for that, because they are already chomping at the bit to get that public option and administer it the way that Medicare Advantage plans, for example, are administered. We got a commitment that we finally tackle long-term care. That was put into my bill for the first time, the giant elephant in the room. We got a commitment that we would eliminate the 800,000 people that are in the long-term care waiting list and create 600,000 new long-term care jobs, mostly, by the way, women and women of color jobs. We got a commitment for the most aggressive pharmaceutical pricing that we have ever had, better than what we passed in the House of Representatives, that any pharmaceutical drug would be negotiated across all payers. And and that no American would pay more for their pharmaceutical drugs than they pay in any other country. So we got a no deductible plan. I mean, I could go on. I have like 3 pages of what we were able to get. Now,
Okay, I think that's I think that's sufficient.
What is she describing? She's not describing. She's describing her Medicare for all bill.
I think she's describing. So Marianne Williamson was saying like, what's the plan now? Because she kind of brought up actually later on in that clip. I didn't play it, but she was like, I think forcing a vote on minimum wage if it doesn't win right, or forcing a vote on Medicare for all if it doesn't win right now, that will be the end of the movement. She literally said that.
Which is the opposite argument that she makes before, that having her own Medicare for all bill and forcing a vote on it, having the hearings on it, is what enabled her to get half of congressional Democrats, representatives on board with her bill. Like I've heard them make this argument frequently, that all of the advocacy that they did, having the hearings in 2019, having the vote on it got all the people on board. But if we were to do that again, to vote and lose is somehow going to be the death knell of Medicare for all, at the same time that they don't really offer anything and then the alternative, because that's what I kept asking. It's not like I woke up one day and was like, I feel I got a message in a dream that force the vote is the only way forward, and I have to commit all of my time and energy and passions to this. No, it was an idea that came out. It seemed good. I listened. I talked to people. But the tipping point for me is when we had Michael Leidy on the podcast, who was Bernie's healthcare outreach director. And he was a DSA advisor. I forget his exact title. He was an NNU. He had a position at NNU. And so I asked him, okay, I will concede that this is not a perfect plan. Every plan has flaws and risks and positives and negatives. So tell me what's the plan is an alternative. And if your plan is better, then I have no emotional commitment to force the vote. It's just an idea. Let's take the best idea. And, respectfully, I really appreciate him taking the time to talk to us. And it was clarifying. And maybe this will ultimately end up being the plan. But the plan was this thing with like a 20-year horizon that involved a state-by-state approach. And, Gavin Newsom running for president and basically carrying Medicare for all on his back on the way to the White House. Now, Gavin Newsom is, a flawed person, someone who could be accurately described as a corporate dim, someone who I certainly wouldn't tether my hopes and prayers of Medicare for all to in the least. And that was the moment where I'm like, okay, thank you for being honest about the alternative. I personally am not comfortable with it. I know a lot of other people are not comfortable with it because we've been told for 5 years that 68,000 people are dying every year from a lack of health insurance. And this is an exigent situation and y'all aren't acting with exigency. So we're going to try this thing. And if for the next 20 years, our stuff doesn't work, I guess you'll be standing there with the bag 20 years from now and Gavin Newsom ready to, I guess, bring us Medicare for all. I'm not fighting you. I'm not fighting your plan. I'm not undermining your plan.
Right.
But I think it's fair for people to want a different kind of more adversarial approach.
Yeah. And I encourage everyone to go watch this interview. Really what got to me, and this is at the moment when I knew force the vote was exactly the right strategy to do. It's that she kept saying, what did she keep saying? We got commitments. We got commitments from the task force. I have 3 pages long of commitments from Biden, right? Like, are we the only people that know political history? Like, Joe, a commitment doesn't mean anything.
Or just
he committed to the $15 minimum wage. He committed to that, did he not? So these commitments don't mean anything. And if you really have 3 pages full of, commitments or whatever that he gave to you, why not publicize that and make sure you hold his feet to the fire saying, look, when we went out and told people to vote for you, it was because you told us you were going to do all these things for healthcare. You were going to get the $15 minimum wage, and we're going to hold your feet to that. Now, it doesn't really feel like they're willing to do that. And so these commitments, we find out these commitments don't really mean much when you have corporate Democrats running the country, and Joe Manchin is king, and Joe Biden won't even go get the 2 senators from his own state to vote yes on a minimum wage. So the commitments don't really mean much to me.
There is a way that politicians can sometimes be held accountable. There's stories of people flip-flopping and, oh, this was your campaign promise, and then you didn't, hold to it. And that kind of pressure is most effective when they're willing to vocally obviously make commitments. Now, Biden vocally obviously committed to a $15 minimum wage throughout the entire campaign. So even that has its limits. But on top of that, the moment he opened his mouth like a week prior to the parliamentarians ruling and said, the parliamentarians probably not going to allow this. At the same time, everything I was hearing from people, progressives who are close to Congress people, was that every indication was that it would pass. If Joe Biden wanted it to pass, I would imagine he would be publicly articulating all of the reasons why. Well, for example, Donald Trump used budget reconciliation to do Arctic drilling. They passed welfare reform through budget reconciliation. Bush fired his parliamentarian and replaced them so that he could do his tax cuts, his deficit growing tax cuts for all of the people who care about deficits. That's the kind of thing I would have been on TV every day and sent my emissaries out on TV every day talking about how this is the longest period in American history without a minimum wage raise, and how everybody who opposed it is going to have to answer to their constituents, and indicating support to labor groups and other constituencies who would be willing to protest in the various localities where these people live, going to those states and doing media, talking directly to the public about why they should pressure their elected officials to go ahead and support a minimum wage. Those are the kind of things that I would expect to see from someone who is sincerely fighting for something. And those are some of the things that we saw, frankly, in support of something as superficial and unnecessary as Neera Tanden's nomination.
Yeah, that's so true. And another thing that frustrated me throughout like this whole, negotiating this relief bill is that when it came to healthcare, right, it's felt like they, were comfortable with these commitments that Biden had given them, but they weren't fighting for Bernie's plan of actually, expanding Medicare. Instead, they were just rolling over and letting Joe Biden 100% fund COBRA subsidies, which we know cost twice as much.
Yeah.
Paying they pay out twice as much for COBRA as opposed to Medicare. So if y'all aren't going to fight on this, even if he tries to put some type of public option up, which, at this point, I don't even know if that's going to happen. What's to say all those commitments you were saying, how it's going to, the age is going to be taken down and it's not going to be run through these corporate plans like Medicare Advantage. Instead, it's going to be run by Medicare, all these things. What's to say that he's not going to do the exact same thing like he did in this COVID bill, which is just blow up our healthcare budget and continue wasting money and just giving money to insurance companies saying, don't worry, we'll fully subsidize, your payrolls or whatever with taxpayer money.
Yeah, I mean, the fundamental issue is that there are never any consequences for anyone at any point in the political spectrum doing something bad. And from a leftist perspective, I'm concerned at the extent to which there's no confidence in the left's ability to move the needle at all in terms of public opinion. Now, I don't need to be told or lectured about how difficult the corporate media is. I am familiar with that conceptually, but that is not an excuse not to try. And that's not an excuse not to be using independent media to your best advantage. So you can sit here and tell me the corporate media is overwhelming and they do all of these Medicare, anti-Medicare for all ads and Medicare for all you wanted. Obviously, that's true. What also is true that the popularity of Medicare for all has skyrocketed over the last 5 years because of Bernie Sanders' consistent advocacy, largely, and all of the obviously volunteers and workers who have been boosting that message and supporting those campaigns. And that now we have 88% of Democrats supporting it. So which is it? Can you have some messaging success? Are you going to brag about these poll numbers and including poll numbers about $50 minimum wage and, marijuana legalization and all of the things? Or are you going to keep pretending like the words that come out of your mouth don't matter and that you have no influence at all? You're a sitting congressperson and you can't figure out how to draw sufficient attention. You can go on Mehdi Hassan's show any night of the week. You can go in front of an MSNBC audience any night of the week. Any of them can. They're enormously popular and they're good for ratings. They can stand out in the middle of the street and call some press fans and give an impromptu press conference and people will listen. They can tweet to their tens of millions of Twitter followers collectively and get crowds of people protesting at Capitol buildings and other institutions across the country. Those are things that could be done. When
But
we had Shama Swan on the show, and she was tweeting, weeks ago, why aren't they calling for mass demonstrations? What happened to they have power and we have people? And then there's no interest in leveraging the people.
right.
Are the people only a resource when it comes to campaign funding, or do they understand that that's an actual source of power?
No, exactly. I mean, it's very simple. It's very easy. They make it more complex than it has to be because, to me, it's really just an excuse. It's a way to excuse inaction, and that's very frustrating. I want to I guess transition to I know you had, I think it was Lauren. What was the journalist?
Lauren Gurley.
Gurley, exactly, and she was on talking about the Amazon union campaign in Bessemer, Alabama. Now, that's a very important union campaign right now, and I want to talk about all the things that Amazon has been doing to, stop that from happening, essentially. I'm going to bring in the only Christian Smalls. He is a former Amazon employee. I'm actually going to let you, Christian, introduce You're the founder. So just go ahead and introduce. I guess.
I got brother. The founder of the Congress of Essential Workers, TCOEW.
Yes.
And former Amazon employee. And I'm here to fight the good fight, my brothers and sisters.
I know you were down there in Alabama. What would you predict? I guess the vote would be. You think most people on site are going to be voting yes on that?
Yeah, before I get into it, I want to say hi to BJ. She is long overdue. So I'm happy to be on the platform, share space with you.
It's so nice to meet you, Chris. It's so nice to be here with you.
Likewise. So, yeah, I was down there 2 weeks ago on the ground with some of my members of TCOEW, former Amazon employees too. Some actually still are employed with Amazon. So we came down from New York, New Jersey. We drove 16 hours.
Wow.
We also had some members come from Arizona as well. And we connected with the workers at, the Circle K, which I like to call the sweet spot, right across the street from the facility where the workers would change, between changing shifts. That's where they'll go grab, gas and their snacks and stuff for work. And that's where I connected with a lot of them. And I can tell you now, it was a lot of misinformation out there on top of everything that they're doing. I know you guys seen the reports about the traffic lights.
Yeah.
That is very much true. I stood out there for hours, and I stood out there every day that I was there, and the traffic lights changed as soon as a car pull up. So the union organizers that are on the corners on the blocks, they call them blocks, they don't even have that chance to connect with workers there anymore. Then there's a police and a suburban at every entrance. So the intimidation factor is there. Workers are being told that if they even stop to talk to any of us, they can be fired. It's just, and then, the sad part about it is just that the misinformation that they have about unions, the workers are being told that if they vote yes and they unionize, they're going to go on an immediate strike and lose, months of pay. And, that's the biggest doubt that they're installing into these workers is that they're going to lose money.
Mm.
So they're using that to their advantage. They got them taking, well, not anymore. Prior to the vote, they had them taking 4 classes a day in a shift. So imagine going to work and you're being subjected to being forced into a classroom, broken down into small groups of 20, and then even smaller groups of that 4 times with just union bust. They're just drilling union busting tactics and false information. The website do it without dues. Just it's a bunch of lies. It's insane to see what this company's doing.
Yeah, Bree, did the journalist that you spoke to, did she mention any other tactics that they were, I guess, employing?
The one other one, in addition to the light that I recall, was so there was a fight over whether or not they're going to be able to vote remotely. The union organizers won that fight, and the concern is if you vote in person that there's intimidation at the site. But what Amazon did was they installed a they got the city to install it like a mailbox right outside the front door, and they like put it in an enclosed tent of some kind, and they're like, vote here, encourage you to vote here. It's a safe, secure place for you to vote. But statistically, and Chris, obviously, you know this better than I do, but the reporter was saying that if employees feel like they're being surveilled, they're unlikely to vote. And then there's confusion about whether or not they can vote remotely because of the existence of the on-campus site and the emphasis on the on-campus site. So what was confusing to me and what I was asking this journalist is like, how is this not prohibited by the NLRB? Like, what is the line here?
Right.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think a few other tactics that they were doing was, like you said, Chris, they had that website, doitwithoutdues.com. They had that. I heard that they're texting them like 2 or 3 times a day, telling them just like vote no type, I don't know, infographics or whatever. Like you said, they convinced the county, literally convinced like Jefferson County, I think it's called, to change the traffic light. And if y'all don't know, they were basically using that as an opportunity at a red light to talk to the workers while they were changing shifts, to kind of convince them to vote yes on this union. And they got them to change that light so they can't organize that way. Like, these are all the tactics that Amazon will employ to make sure that union does not pass. And just that in and of itself should be enough to show you that you need a union, right? And you, Christian, you experience, if people don't know, I want them to hear your story about what happened when you were, organizing against Amazon at the beginning of the pandemic in Staten Island.
Yeah, thank you. I tweeted something today that I was doing a year ago. So I think my Twitter handle is here at @shut_down Amazon. There's a video that I posted today, what we was doing 1 year ago in that facility. We were actually having a full-blown party, no mask, in the middle of the pandemic. New York City becomes the epicenter within days. People that tested positive was in that room, in that actual video. One in particular that I sent home 2 weeks later. So, just to take me back, it's just amazing to see in 1 year what has happened with my journey. And it started on March 30th. I held a protest outside of JFK, Staten Island. 2 hours later, I was terminated for raising health and safety concerns on my end, but the company claimed that I violated a quarantine policy that I'd never seen as a supervisor. And this is after a week of me going into the facility, sitting in the cafeteria, telling the workers the truth for 10 hours a day, going in back and forth with the general manager, trying to get the building closed down. People that were in my group advocating with me was mothers, parents with infants, underlying health conditions, and majority of us obviously are Black and brown, pointing that out as well. And we're being told that, we're following safety guidelines when we had no PPE, we had no facial mask, we had no cleaning supplies, there was no social distancing. Obviously, having a party, that just put all of us at risk. We were already exposed to the virus. And the company told me on that Tuesday, March 24th, last year, they told me in a manager's meeting not to tell my employees in my department that somebody tested positive 2 weeks prior, which happened to be today when we're actually partying last year. So I had to take my stance. I did what I felt was right, put my job on the line. I was a sacrificial lamb, but, I don't regret anything. I was fired 2 hours after the protest. A week later, Jeff Bezos himself, the richest man in the world, decided to have a smear campaign ran on me, calling me not smart or articulate, ironically making me to make me the face of the whole union organizing efforts against Amazon, ironically. So I didn't understand that part, but they basically tried to smear me, but it leaked out. And that really motivated me to found the organization TCOEW. And together we've been traveling the country the entire pandemic, protesting in front of every Jeff Bezos mansions that we can find on Google. Wow. So we started off in New York City, went down to Washington, D.C. We went out west to Beverly Hills. Our last demonstration was in Seattle at the Amazon headquarters. And then 2 weeks ago, we were in Alabama. So, we just continue to fight and stand in solidarity.
No doubt. Wow. Just wow. Appreciate you. And I really think that, your situation and what happened to you, I read some stuff that, some high level executives, quit, and there was a really big story. And I think you don't, and this is why I wish progressives would understand, is that you don't always see the fruits of your labor right away. Right. But you're talking about a whole year later where we're seeing, the first potential Amazon union, at a facility. So, like I said, I appreciate you for that work and the work you continue to do, because that's really important. And even if it doesn't happen right away, right, it can happen eventually. And I just want to, I know you got to go, Bree, in like 5 minutes, but quickly, I kind of want to go over because, they're, to their credit, there have been progressives, showing up at, the unionship or the site to support the union workers or the prospective union workers. And even Joe Biden mentioned, he mentioned something. He mentioned he supported the workers in Alabama, but I didn't realize until I read an article that he actually didn't say Amazon, right? And it feels to me like, and maybe you could speak to this first, Bree, it feels to me like, yes, they're there in support, and I appreciate that. But like you were saying earlier, a lot of the stuff that Amazon's doing seems very illegal.
Yeah.
Are there going to be any repercussions for that?
So my understanding, and I am so far from being a labor expert, and this is why I interview people on my shows, because I don't want to claim any authority here, and I really wish I had taken labor law. But my understanding is that under Trump, the NLRB just wasn't enforcing any rules. Right. So even though we do have labor protections, and the standard is an employer cannot interfere with, employees' desire to unionize, or something broad term like that, which all of the things that we've discussed here today would seem to violate. Right. And so I don't know the details of the specific law and why they're able to get away with things, but it might be that, one might imagine that Joe Biden is signaling, if anything, that, okay, this isn't Trump land anymore. We're not going to let everything fly, which is good, except that could also just mean make sure you're doing everything with plausible deniability. Make sure you're staying within the confines of the law, because otherwise we're going to have to come after you. I think that everyone would agree that there should be a more full-throated statement. But at the same time, what I heard from what the reporter said, and I'm curious to know what you think, Chris, that she was saying that the old-timey union heads down there were excited to have that much support, and that it was the most strong pro-union statement of a president since basically FDR. And the last time a president made a similar kind of statement, it was the same union, the retail workers. Sorry, the acronym escapes me, but it was the same union putting on pressure that had elicited that response from the president. So the union itself was very excited about getting that kind of recognition.
Absolutely. Yeah, the RWDSU. Actually, it's amazing because this union just surprised everybody. I believe everybody in the country didn't expect this union to be the one to finally get to the vote. So for them to see the support internationally, really, and the whole world is watching this vote right now. We have a lot of comrades overseas that are already unionized. There's other facilities that are unionized from Amazon. And this to be the first one in American history. Once again, I always said this is the most important union vote since the 1930s. We've seen the uprising after the economic collapse after the Great Depression. Last year, what we've been going through and what we're still going through, this opportunity right here to be another uprising of unions across the nation. So Alabama really is that catalyst. And, hopefully if they're successful, we'll be able to galvanize the rest of the nation. That's our plans. I know I'm already starting up here in Staten Island in New York, and we plan to just continue to support any type of union drive that has to do with Amazon workers, all essential workers. I think all of us need to be unionized, So that's the reason why I named this organization, the Congress of Essential Workers, because after Amazon, you go for the top dog, but after that, we want everybody else to fall in line as well. Walmart, Target, Kroger, that just closed down 3 facilities. I heard about that. All these gig companies, gig corporations that's been abusing workers especially during the pandemic. They need to be held accountable. They need to be unionized, and workers need to have a voice in the White House.
100%. I know you got to go, Bree. Do you want to plug anything? I mean, I'm sure everyone here probably already watches Bad Faith, but do you have any interesting guests coming on?
Yes. But
that you can say. I don't know if you can say it. But.
Yeah, it's always like, timing, scheduling is always like a little bit of a brouhaha, and you hate to say the next one's going to be when you don't know if it's going to be the next one or the one after that. But I will say, we are trying to also grow our YouTube presence. So not now. Please continue to watch Justin's show to the end. But after you're done, we, release clips periodically from our episodes, including our premium episodes, because we want as much of it to be public as possible. And we just released a really kind of fun, hilarious conversation about all this royal brouhaha this morning. If you want to do a little escapism,
royalty. I gotta watch that.
Yeah, but it's so nice to meet you, Chris. I hope you can come on Bad Faith sometimes. I'd love to continue this conversation. I'm sorry I have to run.
Absolutely.
All right, Bree. Thank you so much for coming on, Bree.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, Chris, I want you to plug your show right now. We'll keep talking, but I want you to, while we have, as many viewers as we do, plug your show because I've been on it. It's amazing. You, Blakely, I know your two other co-hosts. It's a great show, so go ahead.
Absolutely. It's a Smalls World. I'm glad you brought it up because, Blakely wanted to get on tonight, and I want to plug Blakely because she's just a big, supporter of yours, and she also would like to be on this show as well with you one day.
Oh, yeah.
I'm plugging her too. I know she's watching, so she ain't gonna cut my head off.
Right.
But yes, it's a Smalls World. We just launched a couple weeks ago. Justin Jackson on episode 2, an amazing episode. We was talking about force to vote. We was talking about the gaslighting and the $2,000 checks. Show me the money. Even though we're still, we're about to get another $1,400. That's a whole nother, issue. But yes, please follow, support. We have a Twitter handle now on Twitter at It's a Smalls World. So it's on YouTube. It's free. We do have a Patreon as well. If you can, we have the money to support us. Please, absolutely donate. Money does go towards a good cause. Workers and the co-hosts as well. We're all activists, and it would be great for everybody.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so everyone definitely make sure you go check out It's a Smalls World on YouTube, and he said Twitter as well. That's the handle. I want to ask you because you have 2 kids.
I have twins. Yes, 1 boy and 1 girl.
Twins. So they're pushing this child tax credit as if it's going to end poverty, right? And so I kind of want to get your insight. I'm 24. I don't got no kids or nothing. So your insight into just like how hard it is to like survive on, the wages that you're making. And then they give you this tax credit. And is it almost like just maddening to see them pair it as if this is going to like do some crazy thing to end poverty and to help working people?
Just a simple fact that you take $15 minimum wage off the table. That's a start to ending poverty. You take the actual solution off the table. It's insane to even think that, giving somebody a couple $100 for, 9 months, 10 months, that's going to take you out of poverty. That is not, I don't understand. They have a huge disconnect. And I think we all know that, in Congress, let them work for $7.25 for 40 hours a week and bring home bi-weekly checks and see if they want to be living their lavish lifestyle. It's impossible. So for them to dictate how much money the working class people should have in this country, when we're already behind the scale, we're already behind the 8 ball. We should be being paid $25 an hour minimum right now if they kept it up to the productivity rate in this country. So there's no immediate way to end poverty. Giving parents a tax credit. No, absolutely not. That's my take on it. I just really feel like they need to go back to the table with the $15 minimum wage as soon as possible. And it needs to be more than that. It needs to start at probably 30. And then let's negotiate down.
Right, exactly. No, see, and that's the part that's so frustrating right there. It's like $15 was the bare minimum ask. Why? Well, $15 an hour is still getting you what, $30,000 a year? I asked my dad, I said, Dad, my dad was a single father. He had 3 kids. This is right after the financial crash, and middle class. He's has a middle class job, and I'm like, do you in that situation? One, because of their means testing, someone like my dad with 3 kids, single dad, won't get a relief check. Won't get a relief check. So you're telling me that person who has to pay for their kids, everything, the costs that come with having a kid, just astronomical. He had 3. A lot of people, are single moms of 1, 2, or whatever. You're telling me that this tax credit, that's all you're going to give to people, and you won't even give to anybody over $80,000? But see, that's how out of touch they are, because they think that $85,000, $90,000, you're making a killing. You're just rich. Even though they make $180,000, $175,000 a year, right? And so that's what angers me so much. And they call this the American Rescue Plan. What does this actually do? This bill gets people back to the point they were at before COVID. Maybe. And a lot of people have been evicted already. So you can't even really say that statement as fully true. But say even the people that they claim that they're helping so much, right? It gets them back to working paycheck to paycheck, always having stress and anxiety. The little premium cap they did, great. No deductible cap. There's no deductible cap. There's still copays. Mm-hmm. And if you have a $7,000 deductible, you don't have health insurance. Yep. Who has $7,000 laying around, right? And so, that's why I've been so angry. And I'm sure you can attest to that, because you've lived this life. You understand what it's like to work your ass off, have kids, and just try and make it. And the fact that you have these millionaires, all of them are millionaires in Congress, telling you that the little crumbs they're giving you is going to end half of child poverty. Okay, what about the other half? That means you're saying half of kids should live in poverty. And let's not even speak to the fact that those are based off of the federal poverty line, which is at $12,000 for a single individual. A family of 4 making $27,000 is technically not in poverty. Now, Chris, how hard would it be to raise 2 kids on $27,000, and you got the Democrats telling you that they have child poverty?
Yeah. I can tell you now, living in the tri-state area, you're not making it. And that's unless you're working like, new day slavery, so to speak. You're working multiple jobs, and that's what they want. They want you to work multiple jobs, break your back. You don't have time as a working class individual in this country. You don't even have time to enjoy family time. Who really does? I was an essential worker. Now this term that's been deemed on us, I was technically an essential worker since I was 16 years old. I'm twice that now, and I'm still back where I started pre-COVID. I wouldn't have been in a better position. I still would have been breaking my back. I was working 2 jobs anyway. Even working for Amazon, I was still working a second job at MetLife Stadium. So I went straight to work every single day and lost 12 hours of family time, sometimes 14 hours. Don't even consider my commute from New York to New Jersey without a car, 2.5 hours, bus, train, ferry. I did all of that every day. So that's the normal lifestyle of a worker. They have to go above and beyond to get the work and then live check to check. Imagine that pressure of one flaw, one mishap, something tragic happened. Who takes care of these people? It's not the government.
I always find it funny when I see those like CNBC where they like budget out like if you can live on X amount of dollars in a city, and they budget it out. They never put in like random ass costs that you have to pay. Like I'm in LA. The roads are horrible. They put no money to infrastructure. So, I've had to replace my tires almost 2 times already. That's $200, $300 a pop. That never makes it into their budgets.
Never.
Where's that going to come from? What about the $300, $400 you got to pay on your registration every single year out here in California? They never account for all the costs of living. And that's what's so goddamn frustrating. Is they just are so out of touch.
Disconnected. disconnected, but they claim they come from the same background. You know, you hear their campaign promises. They always tell their upbringing and their story of their struggling parents are something. You know, they know the struggles of working people. Some of them are bartenders, some of them are waitresses, but they forget about where they come from. That's the issue. When you get up there, now you're making six figures. You're comfortable. You're going home to a mansion. You got your business donors. You forgot about where you came from. And that's the issue that we have. And we have to, as people, we got to make sure that, once again, we don't show up every 4 years. We make sure that we putting in office people that are going to represent us every single day, even on the local level. You know, that's what we have to do. You know, other than that, I'm a third party to apply that pressure to.
Yeah, that as well. I mean, I think that's important because these two parties, man. I mean,
Yeah.
and to me,
You mean one party. You mean one
right?
party.
It is one party rule. I mean, it is a one party rule. And what we were so excited about progressives is that, you know, they understand our issues and they understand the exigency of the crisis that people like yourself doing that face every single day. So it rings a little hollow when they're telling us, oh, you know, we're going to fight when you just voted for a bill when they're not even progressive member of the House didn't vote for the bill. We're asking 6 to 7 of you to withhold your vote to ram this through, use the unemployment cliff as leverage because Joe Biden needs this to pass. We're asking 6 or 7 of you. We really should be saying if whoever is actually a progressive in the House, you need to vote against this bill. And if you have a coalition of 15, 16 people, that's even better. Like, we're even still asking the bare minimum of them. No, we need all of them to be doing that, right? And so we frame everything so wrong in this country. Like, $15 framed wrong. It should be 20, right? We're talking about a public option. We need to be pushing for Medicare for all, forcing votes on that, right? If the corporate Democrats can talk to each other, get their little block and block Bernie's amendment, 8 strong, even though they only needed 1. They said, no, we're going to come out 8 strong so, you know, we can all deflect some of this criticism. They can do that, but we can't come together as progressives and be willing, like Brianna Joy Gray says, to have that fight in the public. I want to have that fight. Please, let me go on MSNBC and CNN and tell people that I'm holding up this bill because people are dying and they need $15 minimum wage and they need $2,000 full checks. Please have me on to do that, right? But it doesn't feel like they have exigency on these crises. And if you still, at every single turn, vote along party lines with the corporate Democrats, then, you know, I'm glad that you know the right policy, but it almost makes it worse if you're just accepting this at every turn and not changing your strategy, because their playbook is going to be the exact same. When that infrastructure bill comes up, they're going to be like, oh, do you not want infrastructure spending? Do you not want, you know, these roads to get fixed and the pipes to be, you know, fixed and all? Do you not want that? Are you just going to vote no on this bill? They're going to do the same fucking thing.
Yeah.
So are you going to change your strategy or not?
No, it doesn't fit their agenda. And, you know, that's what we asking for. We ask for the progressives that's there, like, to show some type of fight. We put you there for that. And it's just been complacent. You know, it's been nonchalant. And now we're seeing the status quo again. You know, the same thing that we've been getting pre-COVID is just in a different administration. It's dressed up differently, but it's the same stuff. And to be honest with you, you know, it's not enough. It's just not enough. And I just see how we got to the point where we had to put Trump back in office, you know, Trump in office, sorry. And now we're going to be in the same situation if, you know, this administration, once again, don't keep up to its promises. You already gaslighted us and lied to us several different times. I'm tired of going on social media and seeing these mashup videos now. You know, it's ridiculous. And he's only 50 days in. This is his 50th day. You know, he's still walking out slow motion like he in the Matrix, like he's saving America. Like, I don't understand where we at right now. What's going on here? So, you know, once again, you know, it's up to the people. You know, we have, as people, I seen, you know, I can tell you, you know, from being unemployed with no health insurance,
yeah,
lost all of that, right? If it wasn't for the community, I don't know where I would be right now. I wouldn't be sitting here with an organization fighting back against the power if the community didn't support me. You know, everybody got to understand we can support each other. We got to turn inwards and we can support each other. We can create these mutual aids. We can create organizations that support the community for people that lose their housing. We got to do it ourselves. We can never expect the 1% class or the government, whatever party you vote for, to do it for us. And that's where we at in this country. It's sad to say, but even with, you know, AOC and Bernie Sanders, the squad, even with them, and even if Nina Turner gets there as well, it's not gonna help us immediately. We got to help ourselves in this time.
For sure. Wow. You're an inspiration, Chris, and I really appreciate you coming on. You know, what's going on in Alabama, this union drive, I squarely think that, you know, voices like yours and situations like what happened to you, you know, getting fired, you know, it was a big spectacle. You know, you're exposing Amazon for, you know, bad health practices during COVID. And now obviously they're being exposed for trying to bust this union. But I really do think it started with what you did. So I really appreciate you. You know, this country really, if we can, you know, if this is a snowball effect, you know, from this facility to another facility to Walmart to Target, you know, rest assured that you were part of the spark of that. And you know, I think we're all indebted to people like you, real people on the ground, actually risking shit for the betterment of people in this country. So I really appreciate you. Absolutely. One last time, go ahead, plug your show for anyone else who just joined in.
Absolutely, yes. Follow me on Twitter at shut down Amazon. No surprise there. At TCOEW. At It's a Smalls World. The podcast is on YouTube as well. It's a Smalls World. Subscribe to our Patreon. Continue to support Justin Jackson, the Takeover. This show is amazing, man. I'm glad you brought me on.
Thank you, man.
I'm returning the favor. Again, we're going to bring you back on in the future as well. And
that for sure.
Last thing before I leave, I want to talk about March 20th. We're doing another national solidarity event for the workers of Alabama. I'm going to be in New York City, in Harlem on 125th and Malcolm X. So join us there at 2 p.m. We're going to be rallying in solidarity for the Alabama workers and Union Drive. It's going to be a nationwide event. There's demonstrations all over. You can follow these demonstrations on or get involved on supportamazonworkers.org. So thank you again, brother, for having me. And we'll talk
for
soon.
Sure. Supportamazonworkers.org. March 20th. If you're in New York City, go join in solidarity.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Chris Smalls, for being on the show. Appreciate you.
Likewise. Take care. Right. Solidarity.
Yep. Wow. Two amazing guests. I'm so happy that I could have those two on. You know, Brianna Joy Gray, she's truly one of my favorite people to watch and just learn from. I think her show is incredible. You know, she actually asks good questions. Like it's crazy to see, you know, actual, you know, politicians. You know, she had Rokana on, and even people like, you know, union organizers, and you know, she had Adolph Reed on, and she just has a bunch of people on, and she actually presses them, you know, for questions. But it's just in the nicest way. She really is the best. Chris Smalls, I mean, y'all heard it from him. Like, he's a real, you know, organizer. He risked his job back in the beginning of the pandemic because people were getting sick, and he saw the suffering that was going on around him, and he said, no, that's enough. Okay, we're going to organize. And he got fired because of it. And, you know, becoming unemployed in a pandemic, when, you know, you're not forced to, I guess, when he, you know, chose to sacrifice his job like that, that's incredible. You know, that's incredible. So if y'all want to go support him, you know, I definitely encourage you. It's a Smalls World. That's his show. I'll definitely have him back on. And I really, truly do believe that because of the spectacle, and, you know, we're talking to progressives here, because of the spectacle that he raised, you see a whole year later, hopefully we'll see the fruits of that labor. And that's really important. You have to lay the groundwork, the foundation, if you really want, you know, things to get done in the future. And Christian Smalls did that. And so I applaud him. I'll definitely have him back on the show. I was gonna do a segment on the Amazon thing, but I think that was good. I think that was really good having Bree talk about it, because she go check out Bad Faith podcast. Brianna Joy Gray interviewed Lauren Gurley. I think she's a journalist that was covering the Amazon Union Drive there. And then I'm sure Chris Smalls has stuff on his page for that. But thank y'all so much for joining. Watching the stream. I'm gonna try and do this at least once a week. I really like interacting with y'all, seeing the chat. I will have I don't have super chats yet because I'm not monetized actually on YouTube yet. But hopefully next time that will be the case. Y'all can send super chats. Did y'all see my video that I put up on my YouTube page about was it Nigel Farage? I think that was his name. That British guy that said he said no one has done more for people of color than the British royal family. I said what? Are you kidding? Like as if Google doesn't exist, as if the British East India Company doesn't exist, as in the entire colonization of African countries throughout history doesn't exist, as if racism within Britain still doesn't. I don't know the most about Britain, like politics and what goes on there, but I do know that there's still racism in Britain. But don't worry, because the royal family has done more for people of color than anyone in history. How Trumpian was that? Yeah, you see the fresh cut? Yeah, I got I got to get my braids redone. But yeah, that was very Trumpian. It's wild because when Trump does stuff like that, like, I've done more for. No, that was Bernie Sanders. I'm trying to do a Trump impersonation. I can't do it. No one's done more for black people than Trump. And then you see this guy over, in Britain doing the same thing. And then you see someone like Joe Biden on that leaked audio call with the civil rights leaders. He's like, no one was talking about Charlottesville, not even progressives until I did. But what? Like, this dude really is senile, because everyone was talking about Charlottesville. It was on the news for like weeks. Progressives, moderates, Republicans, like everyone was talking about it. That's just a flat out lie. And then he's like, when pressed by civil rights leaders, and dude, Joe Biden is so beyond the pale to me. Like when he was pressed he was on a call with civil rights leaders. I'm talking about leaders of, the Legal Defense Fund, the NAACP, and they're voicing their concerns, saying, make sure, we want Attorney General who's very well versed in civil rights. Merrick Garland is not that, but that's who he nominated. They were talking about Tom Vilsack, the AG secretary, that Biden nominated, saying that they didn't want him. He was really bad for I should do a video on that. Really bad for black farmers. Like almost all of the loans went to like not minority farms, just horrible. And Joe Biden didn't listen to their advice, and actually went out and defended that same guy. And now he's in the administration. And they were saying, don't make sure you don't disappoint people in Georgia. And he said, first off, he was like, I got to go. But let me say this. You shouldn't be disappointed. It's like, bro, they're telling you they're disappointed. And he's telling them you shouldn't be disappointed. Yeah, how patronizing is that? Like, to me, Joe Biden, like the reason Pete Buttigieg is the way he is, like he can't really, grasp power unless he just works within the party like he did, is because, you saw that video of him. I don't know where that was, but he was all those black people were yelling at him, and he was like walking away swiftly, like scared. Like Joe Biden doesn't do that. Joe Biden will yell right back in your face and tell you shouldn't be disappointed in him to a room full of black civil rights leaders. And they do prop him up. They sat there and for the most part took it. I think Brianna Joy Gray like added one of the people that was on the call on Twitter, complaining about what Biden was doing, and she literally said keep me out of keep my name out of this, or something along those lines, where she didn't want to be involved in trashing Joe Biden. I'm like, bruh, that's so bad. That's bad. Like if you're not willing, and this seems to me to be like the core issue of, progressive organizations and, black organizations, all the things, is when Democrats get into power, because they feel that they have some type of relationship with them and they don't want to strain that relationship and they don't want to miss out on, funding or, whatever. They don't say anything. They won't say, like, during Force the Vote, all the people like DSA, the nurses union, all these people that, support Medicare for all and all these things, when it comes to, battling back or, pushing progressives, pressuring them, they just won't do it. They won't do it because they're afraid, that they're going to lose their, access or relation. They're going to strain their relationship to these people, who ostensibly are on your side. But I'm saying that if you don't pressure them, you don't push them to do any of those things, then, they're going to they're politicians. They're going to get pulled by some type of pressure. And right now, all that pressure they're being pulled by is the corporate Democrats. That's just where we are right now. Joe talked to Strom Thurmond with more respect than black leaders. Yeah, so if you don't know, Joe Biden literally did you know how people there's always like this debate when like people like Rush Limbaugh die, or I don't know, like George H.W. Bush, people like that. They're like, oh, should you talk or not talk bad about them, because they're dead, obviously can't defend themselves. Not only did Joe Biden talk positively about Strom Thurmond, who was a segregationist, racist, open public, like was fight. He has the longest filibuster in history, 24 hours. Just went on a break to go to the bathroom. That filibuster was against the Civil Rights Act. Joe Biden then goes to this guy's funeral and does a eulogy for him. He did a eulogy for a segregationist racist. And I'm not black if I don't vote for Joe Biden. Yeah, you can fuck right off, Joe Biden. Yeah, it's one of his closest friends. Like, and this is the thing about Joe Biden, which was so funny, is that because he's basically a Republican, he act like people like Lindsey Graham, like they actually like him. They like he does, like that picture where he's holding the bat and Mitch McConnell's like standing behind him laughing. I'm like, that's the only time I've ever seen Mitch McConnell smile. Like that's an evil, that's an evil guy, and he's cool around Joe Biden. But it's basically, it's because Joe Biden in the 90s, he would stand up there. When Joe Biden wants to fight for something, he'll do it. In the 90s, he stood up there against his own party and was like, I've been the sponsor of every major and minor crime bill, and even 3 years after the Iraq War started, when, most people in the Democratic Party, after supporting it, were like, oh, now we don't support it and we're against the Republicans. And Joe Biden still went out there and was supporting it. He was, vociferously, vocally supporting it, the war. So like when Joe Biden wants something, he knows how to fight for it. He don't want that minimum wage. He don't want the public option. He don't want none of that shit. Please have socialist MMA on your show. I will. Is that? Oh, that's I think I put him in my show the other day. The Joe Biden in the Anita Hill hearings was really horrific. Yeah. I mean, what saved Joe Biden's career was, obviously because he hadn't won a primary. I mean, he ran for president like 2 or 3 times, hadn't won a primary until, the corporate media went all in for him. And, Barack Obama called Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar. I'm still waiting on to see what Amy Klobuchar got for consolidating behind Biden, screwing over working people. I'm still waiting on, because obviously Pete Buttigieg got the transportation secretary, but what did Klobuchar get? We'll probably see. But yeah, Joe Biden, I mean, he's done so much horrible stuff. Like he really is one of the most if you really look at his legislative history, he's one of the most effective Republicans in recent history. I mean, he just claims to be a Democrat. We definitely need a leftist party. How? I don't know. Yeah. All right, I think I'm done ranting for the day. Appreciate everyone for tuning in. I might have a video up tomorrow, or I might just cut up some of my live stream clips and post them if you don't want to watch the whole thing. Really appreciate everyone joining in. I appreciate my guest, Brianna Joy Gray. Go check her out, Bad Faith Podcast, and Christian Smalls. Go check him out. It's a Smalls World. Really appreciate y'all tuning in, and Until next time.